Hello, everybody. Thank you for your interest in this session, for joining us today. My name is Cristina Paca. I work as a project manager for the European Network of Science Centers and Museums, Ecsite. And within the Fit4Food project, we support and coordinate the actions of our city labs. So today I have the pleasure of discussing with you the city lab model in a little bit more detail. Already for those of you joining us yesterday, we had a very nice breakdown of the different phases from Barbara in the session about the Fit4Food overall approach. So I invite you, if you haven't seen that session, to go back to it. There's a lot of detail and also contrast between the city and the policy lab approaches there. But for today, what I had planned for us was a brief introduction to the labs and to the approach, which we will illustrate through the competence building, let's say, formal aim of the project. We will also discuss creating impact at the lab level in a more general sense. Reflect a little bit on the exciting 3 years that are about to complete, and afterwards I hope we will still have quite a bit of time to travel in a digital COVID-proof way to 6 locations across Europe, 6 of our labs, because I think that will really reflect the diversity, that no lab is the same, and will help situate this approach in different locations. Finally, and I'm not sure how much of this is still possible, we will try to open the floor to Q&As, and I know that many more labs than will take the floor are with us in the room today, so don't hesitate to actually use the chat, ask questions, and to those lab coordinators present, don't hesitate to start a conversation there as well, to use the chat. Indeed, Jacqueline just gave me a hand by introducing once again the Food 2030 platform in her brief address. So there are 14 different city labs represented in the Food 2030 platform, and they are hosted by a variety of organizations, from schools to science centers and museums, science shops and living labs, to universities and research centers. So what they have in common, in a way, if I'm to indeed generalize this as broadly as I can, is a commitment to act as the interface between science and society, and to mediate those relationships, and to embed responsible research and innovation in both their own institutional practices, but also networks and initiatives more broadly. In case the pins are quite small, I've placed here the locations of our labs as well, so you can see if there's such an initiative in your city or in your country nearby. So I also want to say that indeed the actions and the reflections that I have the pleasure of sharing with you today are very much part and parcel of the work of our labs. So I'm just a messenger, if I can say so. How do we see the city labs? I think experimentation and these tangible spaces of experimentation where we can make different kinds of interventions at the city level are, I think, a good way to explain it. You can see here as well the emphasis on tools, the emphasis on experimenting, repeating processes, and then also the building of communities. The formal aims are to develop competencies on food systems responsible research and innovation, and to raise awareness of initiatives and action plans. I would add maybe a third broad aim, which is that while engaging in different lab activities, a broader capacity building is taking place for all kinds of participatory processes, placing this network and its coordinators as a good basis from which future initiatives can be built. While each lab takes a different form, we can still see let's say, a process that begins with stakeholder identification and mobilization. Some of the issues that the labs have been looking into are power, influence, and different levels of interest. And with these stakeholders are brought together in a variety of workshops, bilateral consultations, other types of action, and they develop together a vision and a sort of a food system understanding in their local contexts. With that as a foundation, they move on to a more concrete stage of developing a roadmap for their actions, and two, let's say, broad roadmaps have emerged. One is an understanding of competence needs in each location, and the other form roadmaps have taken are R&I agendas, for example. After that, with those lines of action, we move to planning and actually delivering. In terms of competence needs, they have been actually put through a process of ideation, prototyping, piloting, and the outcome of that has been 18 different educational training modules with different audiences and goals in mind. The R&I agendas are also something went wrong. I'm very sorry about that. But the R&I agendas are also being further refined into action plans, and we start to see other projects emerging from that. With these actions ongoing and taking shape, we're also looking at scaling, embedding and translating these into local structures, swapping the modules across locations and learning from that process, making adaptations, and also considering more broadly how the labs can leave a trace, can make an impact in the longer term in terms of sustainability. Things are still happening at different levels, but to illustrate this approach with a concrete case, I will turn to the aim of competence building and just dive a little bit further to make it a bit more concrete for us. As you can see here, we started with quite a wide range of audiences for our competence building work, from school students to future and current researchers, professionals, society at large. So with this broad audience in mind, at each location, a vision processing took place, a vision process took place where we started with the question, what does the future food system look like? And then further refined it. What kind of R&I system can help to achieve it? And what are the competencies necessary for this R&I system to flourish? And here we define those as urgently needed and underrepresented. So these kind of reflections took place with stakeholders at different locations. For the competence, for the development of those, let's say, modules that we had in mind, we started with some core elements that we knew from good practice in the field. So, for example, for younger audiences, but also actually older audiences, the hands-on element and the playfulness were quite important. We were committed to trigger a deep learning process where learning happens on real life cases and examples with real life stakeholders from local communities. And I think also the other ones speak for themselves. And the system thinking competencies are also the subject of one of the Meet the Expert sessions later today with our colleague from Budapest, Diana. I hope that some of you here get a chance to join. In terms of the outcome, a number of modules have been piloted and are now actually being tried all over Europe. And if we can, let's say, cluster them, we see modules that are tackling the system as a whole, but also others that use specific topics to enter, to enter into people's interest in imagination. So food waste in particular, quite a popular topic, as well as nutrition. We also see certain skills being used to arrive at a systemic understanding of the food system. So looking at different narrative frames, interviewing, and so on and so forth. These modules are now being actually made available through the Knowledge Hub. So I echo Jacqueline's call to visit the hub and explore all of the materials that are there. Moving on to the broader impact, of course, competence building through training is just one of them. More than 1,000 recipients have been reached by our various labs, and these figures don't yet take into account the last round over the last few months. So we expect that to be even greater. But it's actually much more that goes on through the process of stakeholders coming together. So we see a lot of connections and learning to strengthen local initiatives with over 1,200 actors uniting under the lab umbrella in different locations. The R&I agendas and the local action plans that I mentioned also allow communities to embed locally these aspirations of Food 2030 and also the priorities, the more particular priorities that emerge in their locations. To dive even a little bit deeper into creating impact. So the project has conceptualized a number of change mechanisms through which this can be achieved. In the city labs so far, inspiration and motivation and knowledge transfer and education have taken quite a prominent role. Of course, it's to be expected due to the competence building element. But as I mentioned before, this empowering of stakeholders, be they individuals or initiatives, and the building and strengthening of interaction between existing networks is also very important. And we also go towards more longer term changes in the institutional framework, encouraging certain ways of work. And I put here some of the ideas that we gathered during our last training session with the lab coordinators. So for example, demonstrating, one of the impacts is that stakeholders see the need of working together, and then maybe the lab approach brings also certain topics more prominently to the table, such as inclusivity. In terms of reflections, I think they over the last 3 years we've really tackled quite a number of things, and these stood out again at our last training session. That collaboration and connections really are at the heart of the approach, bringing projects and initiatives together that share the vision, and our lab coordinators expressed the wish to see even more exchanges, consultation, and feedback. So if we could do it all over again, we would invest even more in that. Things don't work out sometimes in implementing this process that I described. So the openness, staying open about the emergent design and of one's lab, making some assumptions, testing them out, and taking value even from a test that failed was quite important. I think it was great that the lab coordinators were not alone in this initiative, but rather than that this community of practice was facilitated at the European level. So the willingness to cooperate and learn from others engaged in similar endeavors came out as something that should even be made stronger in future projects. I think in the interest of time, I won't dive into the other points so deeply, but rather maybe focus on the last one. just expect different outcomes. This also relates to the emergent lab design, that things will evolve in different ways, linked with the agency that the host institution and the stakeholders have at the local level, the kind of partnerships that could be set up, the geographical context in some cases. So I think this broad reflection serves for a nice introduction to travel now to our different locations and dive into things a little bit more deeper with the coordinators themselves. So in fact, we've got three different areas that we thought would be interesting to raise with you. So for the first part, I will actually stop sharing in a full screen mode so that I can see my colleagues in dialogue. We noticed that, of course, the local context makes a big difference. So how busy the city is in terms of initiatives, what kind of role do community actors, what kind of role does the municipality see for itself in the food system. So in this case, I would like to invite our colleague from Milan, Sara. Sara, are you with us? Can you?
Yeah. Hello,
Perfect. Hi, Sara. Sara, you are joining us from Milan, and the municipality of Milan, of course, is quite active with its own food policy, and of course, also behind with the interesting flagship network of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. So I wondered if you could share a little bit with our audience how you found synergies with the municipality in your lab approach, and maybe some reflections on how you work together.
Yes, thanks a lot, Cristina, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Sara Calcagnini. I'm from the Museum of Science and Technology Leonardo da Vinci in Milano, and I'm head of public engagement. As Cristina said, it was really a challenging experience and very interesting being the City Lab of Milano, because we were so lucky that the municipality of Milano was also joining the was producing the Milano food policy. Where the stakeholders are already engaged, and when the mapping of the system is already done and whatever. But on the other side, I would say try to challenge this. So on one side, it was interesting to work with the municipality, and also it was interesting our role of opening up the issues, the policy issues, to all the citizens and discussing it. And this was our strength. So on one side, we were relying on the issues already relevant for the municipality, but on the other side, our role was giving voices all the citizens, not specialized on the topics, but living in the city. So we were on one side creating with the stakeholders which were already engaged the discussion, but also reinventing the discussion thanks to the voices of the citizen. So I think the flexibility is a word that we can take with us. So open up the issues to the citizen was very important for us, and also on the other side, the flexibility. On our side, I think it's interesting to find on one side the balance between something which has strong priority, like the municipality, but on the other side, challenge these priorities. So swim in this big sea of policy priority, but on the other side, try to swim in an opposite direction, refreshing the discussion. And in this case, the museum and the power of the citizen was our main force to make it. And it was really, really interesting.
Thank you very much, Sara. I think for that intervention, and also for the swimming in the sometimes with or sometimes in different ways in the sea of political priorities, maybe.
Yes, follow the current, but try also to go in another direction, which is something which is also more enjoying and more challenging, and life is more interesting in this way.
Thank you so much. And I think that a voice of citizens also makes a nice link for me to pass the floor to David. David, are you here and able to hear us? I imagine that maybe some of the technical difficulties might have also reached David. Let's see if he's able to join us later in the session. But maybe now, for the sake of time, I will introduce, just maybe give an inkling of what David was going to share with us. So the work of the City Lab in Graz is focusing on a particular district in the city that is facing socio-economic, let's say, weak situation. And the City Lab Graz is working together with community centers to bring these stakeholders, these citizens also to the table, and to give them a voice in broader discussions of food policy. So social justice is also, and citizen empowerment is also at the heart of this lab. And I hope David can join us for a few words later. Moving on now, as I mentioned, there are different also approaches to create impact. So I invite now Caterina and Alania to join us. I would say that, as you have seen, our audience have been quite broad. So that is also due in part to the diversity of host institutions. And Caterina, you are based at actually in a school. So your lab has a school at its center. How does that actually influence your lab design, and how does that look for you? How do we transform and open up a school to these practices?
Well, thank you, Cristina. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the conference. Well, indeed, this is a question. This is the hard question we need to answer. This is our vision and this is our goal, how to transform and open up the school to the societal needs. So we've been lucky enough to work on the first open schooling projects, open schools for open societies. So develop a roadmap towards a methodology and a roadmap towards opening up the school to the society and the needs and to the local community. So we've seen that this is the food system is an important issue to address, also for the well-being of the students, of our students. So our goal is to transform the school and also make it a hub for the food system transformation. We've been trying to work on innovative educational approaches, and now in following activities and initiatives we are involved, we try out different approaches, for example, the school as a living lab also. And our goal is not only to equip, develop our students' competences, but also equip them in order to become the food smart citizens of tomorrow. And there is a huge number of initiatives and activities that we have co-developed with the representatives from the different types of stakeholders, as they have been mentioned. Of course, the project Fit for Food has given us a context, a framework to work on, and allows us also to be flexible in order to adapt. So there are many educational activities, multidisciplinary projects that can be implemented and can be adapted depending on the age of the students. We are a school covering from the kindergarten up to high school. So, for example, activities like the school garden can be adapted to the different ages of the students. We have tried to be in touch with experts to provide the room and bring them into the school, or make students come in contact with them and support them and guide them to in these educational activities. And it's also not only the educational activities, but the school operation itself that can be transformed. For example, how a school can become food waste school or a no waste school. So there is a huge room for initiatives and activities. And we've been also lucky enough to be part of recent projects, for example, the food shift. And so we would like to invite everyone that is interested to stay tuned and collaborate with us in this process. As you have mentioned, it's not an easy process. It's not easy to say that in 3 years we have achieved the food system transformation, but it's an ongoing process, and it's really important to stay motivated and find good collaborators in this way to help and assist in this process.
Thank you very much, Caterina, for your intervention, and also for pointing out to us how, you know, different functions of the school can be adapted. And indeed, the school should be seen as a system first and foremost. So a system interacting with quite a complex system. Thank you for that. And we now maybe come more towards a research focused approach. So this time, the university or the research ecosystem. And I would like to pass on the floor to Alanya. Alanya, you have recently been working with partners in Amsterdam and beyond, and the region on an RNI, shared RNI agenda. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that and how this opportunity, what that opportunity means for your lab?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Cristina. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to share some experience about our work within the Amsterdam City Lab. So this City Lab is indeed part of the science shop of the VU University in Amsterdam. And we indeed actually tried or aimed to develop a food-related research and innovation agenda from the start. And the idea was to connect this agenda to research and also primarily education at the university, so as to stimulate students to connect to important stakeholders in the region and to really work with them on certain food-related challenges that are now identified as being urgent, actually. So I will share some experiences with regard to our collaboration with the municipality of Amsterdam, since we have been able to actually truly connect to them to realize this goal of developing an agenda since last year, because that was a journey. We talked with the municipality from the start. So 3 years ago, we already talked with them about their activities around food and also about the FIT4Food project, about the ambitions of the City Lab. And I think that was really useful, but we also experienced that food was not yet really a topic within the municipality. But since this year, that really changed, because food became a topic. And now the municipality is working on a food strategy and also initiated a so-called academic workplace foods, which aims to connect different actors within research, but also between researchers and non-academic stakeholders. And we have been able to connect to them as a City Lab Amsterdam. So first of all, to help enrich the food strategy. And secondly, to make a start with this food-related RNI agenda, And we, of course, both did this with multi-stakeholder workshops designed by the City Lab. So we invited all kinds of different actors based on this sort of quadruple helix, where we envisioned the food system and thought about the sort of breakthroughs that are needed and how we can realize that. So we're now really in the process of making this agenda together. But viewed from the City Lab, I think it was really important to realize that there was a huge window of opportunity suddenly. So when the project was halfway, we were able to connect to them. And now this R&I agenda has really become part of something. And actually, students are already working on certain food-related topics from this agenda. So there are already some really nice connections between the courses at the VU and the important stakeholders in the region. So yeah, that's really important. Sara also mentioned already this flexibility indeed, and also trying to see those windows of opportunity and then immediately act on it actually.
I think, and to have the, indeed, thank you for raising that, to have the skills and the openness to identify those and to seize them. Indeed, I think it's also a message that came out at the last meeting that we all had together. So thank you for illustrating that with your example, Alanya. I have been told that David is here, has managed to overcome all the many obstacles that that Zoom has thrown in the way. David, can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for pushing through and joining us. I already gave the group a little preview of what you were going to share. So I really leave the floor open to you. How have you been working on social justice in Graz, and yeah, what kind of learnings have come out of that process?
Yeah, thank you. As Cristina already mentioned, we have a kind of focus on socially deprived neighborhoods and want to kind of address issues of sustainability with issues of social inclusion of sustainable food systems. And therefore, we connected with 2 neighborhoods in Graz, where we worked closely together with community centers there, which support their clients or the neighborhoods in order to for daily problems and so on. And after some kind of trust, building trust with these social institutions, which was one of our difficult tasks, since they are very have a lot of things to do and are kind of open for new things, but slightly not. So it was difficult to convince them to join with us, and that we can that our food lab has a profit for them. And so we used a RRI approach. So we didn't want to have kind of, okay, we have an idea that we want to put upon them, but to co-create, for example, using the fostering change in our food systems workshop, but also the citizens mandate we used in order to have the people articulate what they think is their problems, or what needs they do they have, and so on. So in another sense, we have also a lot of research institutions dealing with food systems here in Graz, and that's why it's also one reason, besides our interest, that we wanted to address the food justice issue. What were our learnings? The importance of establishing trust. So we as researchers do not have the connections to the people in the neighborhoods directly, which is very difficult. You also have to establish trust for regular citizens, most of all for socially deprived citizens. And so it was very important to have these cooperations with these community development centers who reach their clients. And we also had the challenge in one of our recent workshop where we had different stakeholders from the other research institutions, from local political parliament and different community centers, that the methodology or the methods we used are a kind of balancing act between in-depth system analysis and a kind of system thinking approach, where we really try to develop very fast some ideas. So this was kind of challenging also in the online sphere. And altogether, we learned that we have to have a balancing act between short-term needs and priorities of the practitioners or the community development centers and our long-term strategic perspective of research and our food lab, and also for the system transformation. So this kind of balancing act is very, very tough. But we think that we have brought new perspectives to these practitioners. Sorry for taking so long.
No worries, David. Sorry for for the initial technical difficulties, and thank you for sharing. I think your point about understanding well the stakeholder needs, also demonstrating value, and yeah, investing in those long-term trust relationships. I think we can definitely take that forward, and it was an important message to share. Thank you very much. And for our last part, I hope that we will still have a chance to hear from both. Sorry, Carlos and Lisa, we are running a little bit late, so I'm going to have to. Yeah, I hope that this won't be closed down too fast. I know that you work in quite special circumstances. So your lab is active at the regional scale. On the one side, in the Azores, in an insular context, in an island context, and in Trentino, you've got the mountainous region that is bringing a new, an extra dimension. So I was wondering if you could both share a few thoughts on how that is influencing your lab design and the kind of vision and challenges that you face. Carlos, could I ask you to say a few words?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Cristina. I would point out some advantages in living in one island. In our lab, we are organizing events on 2 islands at the same time in a very short time because of COVID. And I would say that, as Sara said, persons and institutions rely on us the same way as we rely on them, because we already know each other from past activities and partnerships. So that's a very strong advantage in small islands, such as in small mediums, such as islands. That would be one of the greatest advantages, and also to have the possibility most of the times to meet in person with stakeholders and partners. In terms of these disadvantages, well, organizing events in 2 islands at the same time can be sometimes tricky to keep the sync and the agendas to synchronize, but we manage still. Another disadvantage or difficulty that I feel personally is sometimes in very small cities. For all of you watching this, I live on an island with just 56,000 people. It's a very small island, so most of the time when we organize events, after 10, 12 years doing this, we see lots of times the same person. So it's kind of, I would say, in terms of social science, it's a biased sample, you know what I mean? So instead of getting new faces, sometimes this happens. We felt this on the Citizen Mandate workshop, open to the public. And sometimes I also feel like a slow pace in organizing things. In an island, people are not always used to organizing things, and sometimes you have to be boring to them and sending emails and phoning and ringing in order to keep things done. But mostly it was not the biggest difficulty, to be honest, was not addressed to living in a insular context. It was mostly time and COVID. But that's basically it. I don't want to take too long. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. I think it's also good to realize that there's a day-to-day element to the labs, and that there are certain difficulties and things to consider. So thank you for bringing that on board as well. Lisa, how do things look like for you? Has your local context shaped? In what ways has your local context shaped the design of your lab?
Good morning to everybody, and thank you, Cristina, for this opportunity to share our experience in the context of the Food Lab Trentino. Food Lab Trentino joined the Food 2030 platform just in the last year of the project activities. And is hosted at the Fondazione Edmund Mach, that is a research institute that is located, as Cristina said, in a rural mountain position in the Italian Alps, in the autonomous province of Trento. Trentino is entirely classified as a disadvantaged mountain area, as over 70% of the territory is above 1,000 meters. So the only flat territories are in the valleys. And of course, Fondazione Edmund Mach is located in one of the major valleys. And Trentino is indeed, despite the nature of the territory made of these mountains and valleys, are able to engage strong relation and connection at the interregional level, and has traditionally developed cooperative approaches to counterbalance its fragmentation. So this, I think, is really an advantage in the context of this fragmentation that territories made, because the morphological and orographic aspects of the provincial surface have a really strong influence the use of soils, and of course the whole food system. So being a food lab is giving us the opportunity to share a different and peculiar situation and condition for the local future proof of the food system, so to improve and to address this food system transformation. The advantage that FEM, so the Fondazione Edmund Mach, is really having a proven capacity to mobilize a diverse array of actors in the local food system, promoting synergies with major ongoing initiatives at local levels. So FEM traditionally cooperates with several stakeholders and citizens as well in a really multi-level way, because it's acting as an instrumental, not-for-profit foundation of the autonomous province of Trento. And also thanks to the small dimension of the region, we really be able to create synergy and working table that to really discuss together about research and innovation activities to perform, to improve the food system at a whole. One of the really key point is that Trentino, even if it's since it's really small, and the agriculture is really very as a really very diversified production. We have a high variety of products and cultivation techniques, and often still very anchored to local tradition. And this is also thanks to the cooperative system that is really that involves all sectors of agricultural activities in Trentino since the end of the 19th century. So it's really have a fundamental importance for the development of the agriculture sector and more in general in Trentino economy.
So it's really... Sorry, I'm afraid that our breakout rooms will be closing soon. So would you mind if that was the last point, or could you finish?
No, I was just saying that there are, even if we are like classified as a disadvantaged area, we create some cooperation, the cooperative system, so this cooperation that creates really great infrastructures, and also we have really strong communication among the different stakeholders that make having a really successful discussion also to improve the food system and make real transformation of the food system for the future.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and sorry to have had to cut you off. I think it's there's no choice. The time is a hard master, so we will soon return to the plenary session and to the break. But thank you for that note, Lisa, sort of emphasizing, right, that under certain conditions, you have no choice, you have to innovate, and there's a lot of tradition and diversity, right, that the labs should use in setting up their activities. I hope that with these small interventions, I wish we would have had a bit more time to dive into each of the cases, but I hope that with each of them, we have opened an appetite to the people listening in to come to the project, reach out to the coordinators in their various locations, explore this further, and persuaded you that there's a lot of diversity in the cases and a lot of different learnings, maybe connections with your individual circumstances as well. Having said that, all that is left for me is to thank you for your attention. I've also placed there my email address, so if there are any questions or issues that you found interesting from the presentation today, do reach out, and it would be my pleasure to bring you in touch with our different coordinators. You can also find their contact details and a bit more information about the hosting institutions on the project website, so you can also reach out yourself to hear more about their different experiences. Thank you, everybody.